I've always been drawn to forgotten places, abandoned buildings, empty streets, and the stories left behind in the silence. So when I heard about Black Hollow, an abandoned mining town nestled in the shadow of the mountains, I couldn't resist. The stories about it were vague but ominous. People spoke of strange disappearances, shadowy figures, and a sense of overwhelming dread. Still, I chalked it up to superstition. The road to Black Hollow was barely a road at all, just a dirt path choked with weeds and hemmed in by towering, skeletal trees. The sky above was an unsettling shade of gray, as if the sun itself refused to shine on the place. When I reached the outskirts, the air seemed to change, growing heavier and colder. The town was exactly as I'd imagined, but worse in ways I couldn't articulate. Crumbling wooden buildings sagged under the weight of years, their weathered planks warped and splintered. Rusted mining equipment lay strewn about, half buried by the encroaching earth. Vegetation had overtaken much of the area, wild and untamed, with vines snaking through broken windows and wrapping around decaying structures like veins. I parked my car at what might have once been the town square. A faded, tilted sign creaked in the wind, its letters barely legible, "Welcome to Black Hollow." The silence was oppressive, not the kind of quiet you find in peaceful solitude, but a heavy, suffocating stillness that made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. I walked cautiously, my footsteps crunching on the gravel, the only sound breaking the eerie quiet. As I explored, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows played tricks on my eyes, and I found myself glancing over my shoulder every few steps. The buildings seemed to lean closer the further I went, their darkened windows like empty eye sockets staring me down. I stopped at what looked like the remnants of a general store. Its wooden door hung crookedly on rusted hinges, swinging slightly even though there was no breeze. I hesitated before stepping inside. The floorboards groaned under my weight, and the faint scent of mildew and rot filled the air. Shelves lined the walls, empty except for a few broken jars and faded cans. That's when I heard it, the faintest whisper, "Leave." I froze. The sound was so soft I could have convinced myself it was my imagination. But it came again, clearer this time, and unmistakably real. "Leave, now." I spun around, flashlight sweeping across the room. Nothing. The space was as empty as when I'd entered. Heart pounding, I stepped back outside, the whisper still echoing in my ears. The sky had darkened further, heavy clouds hanging low, and the once distant mountains now seemed oppressively close. I considered leaving, but a part of me, stubborn or foolish, refused. I wanted answers, to see the infamous Black Hollow for what it truly was. Further down the street, I spotted the entrance to the mine, a gaping black maw framed by rotting wooden beams. A rusted cart sat nearby, its wheels locked in place by time and rust. As I approached, the air grew colder, and the smell of damp earth and iron filled my nostrils. The whispers returned, louder now. "You shouldn't have come." This time, the voice wasn't soft or distant. It was clear, close, and accompanied by the faint sound of footsteps, light, deliberate, and coming from inside the mine. My heart raced as I peered into the darkness. A figure emerged. At first, it was barely more than a shadow, but as it stepped into the dim light, I saw it clearly. It was a man, or what had once been a man. His face was pale and gaunt, eyes sunken and black as the void. His clothes were tattered, covered in dirt and blood. He moved unnaturally, his limbs jerking as if he were a puppet on frayed strings. I stumbled back, tripping over a rock and falling hard onto the ground. The figure didn't stop. It kept coming, its mouth opening impossibly wide as if to scream, but no sound came out. Scrambling to my feet, I turned and ran, not daring to look back. The whispers followed me, growing louder and more frantic with each step. They weren't coming from just one voice anymore but from dozens, men, women, even children, all saying the same thing, "Leave. Leave, leave." When I reached the car, I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Just as I managed to start the engine, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The figure stood at the edge of the town, joined by others, their hollow eyes fixed on me. As I sped away, the oppressive silence returned, but it was far from comforting. The voices had stopped, but I could still feel their presence, like icy hands pressing against my back. When I finally reached the main road, I pulled over to catch my breath. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. I pulled out my phone to search for more information about Black Hollow, but nothing came up. No records of the town, no stories, nothing. It was as if it had been erased from existence, except for me. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, those hollow, empty faces staring back at me. And in the quiet of my room, I heard it again, leave. I never went back to Black Hollow, and I never told anyone what happened. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is still, I hear the whispers. And I wonder if I truly left, or if a part of me is still there, trapped in that forsaken town. If you like this video, a thumbs up is always appreciated. And by subscribing to the channel, you help support the creation of more videos just like this one, real short scary stories, disturbing short horror stories.